What if everything you've ever known about time is completely wrong? What if the past, present, and future already exist, and you're just moving through them like pages in a book? And what if time itself isn't even real? This isn't just science fiction. Some of the world's greatest physicists believe that time is an illusion, an artificial construct that only exists in our minds. If they're right, it means your entire life, every moment you've ever lived, and everything you will ever do, already written. It means that free will might not exist, and that the future is not something we create, but something we're simply experiencing. Sounds crazy? It gets even stranger, because some scientists believe there may be a way to escape this illusion. And if that's true, could we break free from time itself? Let's find out. For centuries, we've accepted time as a fundamental part of reality. It dictates our lives, from the smallest daily routines to the grand unfolding of history. We measure it in seconds, minutes, hours, and years. We celebrate birthdays, mourn losses, anticipate the future, and reflect on the past. But what if time isn't moving forward at all? What if every moment, past, present, and future, exists simultaneously, and we are simply perceiving them in a linear fashion? This question isn't just some abstract philosophical puzzle. It's a challenge posed by some of the greatest minds in science. Albert Einstein, one of the most brilliant physicists in history, once made a shocking claim. The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. If he was right, then time isn't flowing. It's not a river, pushing us from one moment to the next. Instead, all of time is already there, completely laid out, like a giant map or a book where every page exists at once. This means that the future is already written. The past still exists, and everything that will ever happen has technically already happened. Think about what this truly means. The day you were born isn't gone. It still exists, somewhere in this vast, unchanging structure of time. The moment you're living right now is just one of many frozen instances in a cosmic timeline. And the day you will die has already occurred. It just hasn't reached you yet. But if time isn't real in the way we think, then what is it? Is it possible that time is simply a way for our brains to make sense of reality? And if we could step outside of our perception, would we finally be able to move through time freely? Would we be able to see the past as easily as we look at a photograph? Would we be able to visit the future like stepping into another room? Or would we discover something even more terrifying? That we are simply trapped in an unchanging, pre-written timeline, doomed to follow a path we can never alter. If time is an illusion, then what is real? This question isn't just theoretical. It's a challenge to everything we think we know about the universe. Because if time isn't real, then reality itself might be something far more mysterious than we ever imagined. From the moment we wake up to the moment we fall asleep, we are constantly aware of time. It seems to flow in one direction, always forward, never backward. We remember the past, but we can't remember the future. We feel time slipping away as moments turn into memories, as events fade into history, as the future unfolds into the present. But why? Why do we perceive time as something that moves? Why does yesterday feel different from today? And why do we expect tomorrow to come? Why does time seem to push us forward, dragging us into the unknown while leaving behind everything we've already lived? The deeper we investigate, the more we realize that this feeling of time moving forward is not as obvious as it seems. In fact, physics doesn't require time to flow at all. Let's imagine something strange for a moment. What if time isn't flowing at all? What if every moment, past, present, and future, already exists, and we are simply experiencing them one by one, like flipping through pages of a book. Think of a film reel. When you watch a movie, the characters move, talk, and interact. But if you pause the film and look at the individual frames, you'll notice that each frame already exists. The movement of the characters isn't happening in real time. It's simply your perception of those frames playing one after another that creates the illusion of movement. Could time be the same way? Is it possible that all of time, every moment that has ever happened and will ever happen, already exists, and what we call the present is simply our consciousness moving through these moments, one at a time? Some physicists and philosophers believe that the movement of time is not a property of the universe, but a feature of human perception. In other words, time might not be something that moves. Instead, it might be something that is already there, completely laid out, like a giant, unchanging structure. If this is true, then why do we feel like time moves? What is making us experience the past as something that is gone, the present as something happening, and the future as something that hasn't arrived yet? To understand this mystery, we need to break down what we think we know about time. Let's do a thought experiment. Close your eyes and try to feel time passing. Do you feel it? That sensation of the present moment slipping into the past while the future slowly approaches? That feeling is so deeply ingrained in our experience that it seems impossible to question. But what if I told you that this sensation is not a fundamental feature of reality? What if it's simply how our brains organize information? Think about how memory works. You remember waking up this morning. You remember what you ate for lunch. You remember conversations, events, and experiences from your life. Each memory is stored in a particular sequence, creating a mental timeline of your life. But here's something strange. Your brain doesn't store the future. This gives you the impression that the past is behind you, while the future is ahead. But that's only because you can't recall the future the same way you recall the past. In reality, your memories exist in the present. Everything you remember is just information stored in your brain, accessible right now. Could it be that time feels like it's moving forward simply because our brains are constantly updating and organizing new experiences, giving us the illusion of motion? And if so, does that mean the passage of time is nothing more than a trick of the mind? If time really moves forward, we should be able to see this movement in the fundamental laws of physics. But here's the shocking part. Physics does not require time to flow. The most fundamental equations of the universe, Newton's laws, Einstein's relativity, and even quantum mechanics, work just as well if you run them backward as they do forward. For example, imagine two billiard balls colliding on a pool table. If you film this event and play it backward, it still makes perfect sense. The balls bounce and roll in a way that follows the same physical rules. Nothing about the event tells us whether time is running forward or in reverse. This suggests that time itself has no preferred direction. Yet, in our daily experience, we clearly feel time moving forward. So why does physics allow time to be reversible, while our reality does not? One of the biggest reasons we think time moves is because of entropy, a concept in physics that describes how things naturally move from order to disorder. The second law of thermodynamics states that entropy always increases over time. In simple terms, this means a cup of hot coffee cools down, but never spontaneously heats up. A shattered glass stays broken. It doesn't magically reassemble itself. A flame burns and turns wood into ash, but you can't reverse the processes and make the ash turn back into wood. This is why time appears to move forward. The universe is always increasing into disorder, If we ever saw things happening in reverse, like smoke gathering itself back into a cigarette, or a messy room tidying itself up, we would instantly feel like we were watching time play backward. This is why scientists say entropy is the closest thing we have to a true arrow of time. It creates an irreversible sequence of events, giving us the sensation that time is moving forward. But here's where things get strange. Entropy only applies on large scales. On the quantum level, the level of atoms and particles, things don't follow this rule. Particles can move forward or backward in time with no problem at all. So if time is really flowing because of entropy, then why do particles seem to exist outside of this rule? Could it be that time isn't actually moving, but only appears to move because of the way we experience the world on a large scale? If time isn't actually moving, then what is it? Could it be that we are simply experiencing reality one moment at a time, like flipping through frames of a movie? Some scientists believe in the block universe theory, the idea that all of time already exists, past, present, and future. In this view, the past hasn't disappeared. It still exists somewhere in the fabric of the universe. The future isn't something that will happen. It already exists, just waiting to be observed. And what we call the present is simply our consciousness moving through an unchanging structure of time. If this is true, then the flow of time is nothing more than an illusion, a trick played by our brains as we move through an already existing reality. And if time isn't actually moving, that leads us to an even bigger question. Are we truly in control of our own future, or has it already been written? Could it be that we are simply following a path that is already set, unable to change a single thing? If so, what does that mean for free will? And what does it mean for the very nature of reality itself? This isn't just a thought experiment. It's a challenge to everything we believe about time, existence, and what it means to be alive. If time isn't moving, then what is it? Could it be that time is simply a human-made concept, something we invented to make sense of change? Or is there something deeper about time that we are yet to understand? The more we examine time, the more we see that it doesn't behave the way we think it should. For instance, we treat time as a measurable quantity. We divide it into seconds, minutes, hours, and years. We build calendars, set alarms, and schedule meetings. But is time really something that can be divided into pieces? In the laws of physics, there is no universal clock ticking away the moments of reality. There is no grand countdown of the universe. Instead, time appears to be something much more relative and fluid. Albert Einstein's theory of relativity showed us that time is not fixed. It bends and stretches depending on how fast you are moving and how close you are to a massive object. This means that two people can experience time differently based on where they are and how they move. If you were on a spaceship, traveling close to the speed of light, time would slow down for you compared to someone on Earth. If you spent a year traveling at near light speed, you could return home to find that hundreds of years had passed for everyone else. This isn't science fiction. This is a proven reality. It's called time dilation, and it has been tested using atomic clocks on airplanes. When flown at high speeds, the clocks measured slightly different times compared to those left on the ground. In extreme cases, like near a black hole, time can almost come to a complete stop relative to an outside observer. So if time is something that can stretch, bend, and stop, is it really something that flows at all? Or is time just another dimension of space, something that exists all at once, but appears different depending on your point of view? One of the most radical ideas in modern physics is called the block universe theory. This theory suggests that past, present, and future all exist at the same time. Imagine that time is like a wide frozen block of reality. Every moment, every event, every possibility already exists. The only reason we experience time as moving forward is because our consciousness moves through this block, moment by moment. Think of it like a book. Every page already exists. Every word is already written. You are simply reading it, one page at a time. In this view, the past isn't gone. It's still there in the structure of the universe. The future isn't something that hasn't happened yet. It's already there, waiting to be experienced. Our idea of now is simply the page we are currently reading. But if the past and future both exist, does that mean we have no free will? Are we simply following a script that has already been written? Or is there a way to step outside the book, to break free from the illusion of time and see reality as it truly is? If the block universe theory is correct, then time is not something that moves, it's something we move through. But is it possible to see beyond our place in time? There have been reports from people who claim to have had out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and moments of extreme clarity, where they claim to have seen time from an outside perspective, as if all of existence was laid out before them. Some physicists suggest that if we could step outside of time, we would see the entire history of the universe at once, just like looking at a map from above, instead of walking through it step by step. Could it be that our consciousness is trapped in a single perspective, only able to experience one moment at a time? And if so, is there a way to expand that perspective, to see time itself as an illusion and step into something greater? This idea takes us into deep philosophical and spiritual questions. Some ancient teachings suggest that time is an illusion created by the human mind, and that true reality exists beyond time. In Buddhism, the idea of eternal now suggests that past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously, and that true enlightenment comes from stepping outside the illusion of time. In Hinduism, time is seen as cyclical, not linear. The universe is created, destroyed, and reborn in endless cycles, suggesting that what we see as progression is just part of a larger repeating pattern. Even in modern consciousness research, some theories suggest that our perception of time is shaped by the limitations of our brain. If we could change how we think, could we change how we experience time? Could we, in some way, become unstuck in time? If time is just a mental construct, if it doesn't really flow, but is simply a way our brains organize reality, then what does that mean for everything we believe about life? Think about the way we talk about time. We say we run out of time, as if it's a physical resource. We talk about the past, present, and future, as if they are separate things. We fear the unknown future and regret the unchangeable past. But what if time isn't something real that we move through?